Hi, and welcome to Higher Ed. I'm Luda Issaharov. After a tumultuous year in which the University of Michigan student government held up funding in order to push a pro-BDS agenda, Lucas Korn made the bold decision to run for vice president on a platform of bridge building and inclusivity. Despite facing significant anti-Semitism during his campaign, he remains grounded in his belief that student government should uplift and represent all students. Today, I sit down with Lucas, an incoming senior and the newly elected student body vice president. A quick note before we begin: in this episode, Lucas speaks about threats made to his family during his campaign. It should be noted that his mother, Betsy Korn, is the former president of the board of AIPAC and currently serves as the chair of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Here's our conversation. I've been so looking forward to recording this episode, and Mazel Tov on winning your election. This is, I don't think people realize, but winning at a school the size of the University of Michigan is a huge deal. And I know this was not an easy path, but today we will be unpacking the crazy journey that led you here. So welcome to Higher Ed. How are you feeling coming off of finals week?
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Appreciate what you guys do, and just happy to be part of this. Yeah, so finished finals last week. Just been kind of transitioning between that and getting into my job for the summer. So yeah, enjoying it as much as I can, enjoying the free time, and then I'm back to work for the rest of the summer. So it'll be fun.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your major and what brought you to the University of Michigan?
Yeah, so I'm a junior studying political science, originally from Connecticut. And if I got you started on what brought me to Michigan, I don't think I'd stop. But no, I mean, it's a really special place. It's a community that you can't really compare to anywhere else in the world. You know, obviously there's a lot of anti-Semitism and there's difficult things we have to deal with on campus, but to me, none of that really compares to the size and scale and really love of the Jewish community here. I believe there's 7,000 Jewish students at the school, and that's an incomprehensible number compared to what a lot of people I know have to deal with at other schools. And so just kind of having the consistency of knowing every weekend there's at least 3 Shabbats you can go to. There's all sorts of different people supporting you. There's plenty of different clubs and organizations to connect Jewish students. It's a really special community. I mean, even the Greek life here, interestingly enough, is massive Jewish sectors. Just really grateful for the school. It's truly a godsend. And I'm sure you know from any other Michigan person you meet, you know, when one person in your family is Michigan, everyone in your family is Michigan. So hopefully it extends long beyond me.
I know the Michigan pride is very strong from what I've experienced. Were you involved in Greek life at all?
Yes, so Greek life is a lot of fun. I was in a fraternity. I still am technically, but you know, most of that was kind of front loaded to the beginning of my college experience. And so, you know, had my fun, met an incredible group of guys that I truly love to death. They're going to be lifelong friends. And, to me, that's very special. But yes, I was actually the president of my fraternity last year. So.
Which fraternity?
Delta Chi.
Wow. Nice. So leadership is in your blood. Can you tell me about the origin, what started your whole interest in student government? Take it back to the very beginning. Yeah,
so it's an interesting story because, you know, a lot of people get involved in student government pretty early in their time here, and I was pretty much the opposite. You know, I was focused on a lot of different other things, you know, extracurriculars and school and my fraternity and many other things. But, you know, last year, obviously, I experienced what I think a lot of Jewish students have to experience, which is this feeling of kind of helplessness and not feeling like you were really doing enough to contribute to the fight against anti-Semitism. And so when I learned that there was not only a history of a lot of anti-Semitism within student government and a massive lack of Jewish representation, but there's also, in this specific election cycle, a lot of people running under the motivation of what can we do to suppress Jewish voices and turn our school as much as we can against Israel and all of that. It was concerning to me. And so I started to look at how this all worked, and I realized, you know, probably can't be that hard to put together a decent campaign with the kind of social circles and networks I'd built out. And so put together a campaign, you know, pretty last minute without much experience or understanding. So I'm in the School of Literature, Science, and the Arts. And of the 45 total spots in the Central Student Government, there are 15 representative positions from LSA. I ran for one of those. And, I didn't really know what to expect. The biggest thing I noticed is a lot of the students that I came to and said, hey, I'm running for student government. They said, what the hell is student government? And, for me to realize that there was such a massive disconnect between the students and, the percentage of students that actually vote in these elections versus people that are affected by these elections. And so, I started to really put effort into outreach and connecting to students, not just within the Jewish community, but all around campus, because, in the last year when our government, 22 of the 45 seats, as well as the presidency, was run by a party that their express goal was to shut down the government, and they were trying to do it as a way of protesting against the university and encouraging divestment. That to me, that was a big opportunity of, I knew there were a lot of Jewish students here that wanted to vote and wanted to see representation and cared about what student government looked like. But, they hadn't done it. They hadn't been properly mobilized. And, because of that, they kind of looked at the government every year and said, oh, why did no one do this?
Right. And similar to the students on your campus, I'm sure a lot of the people listening don't even really understand the scope of what student government does.
Yeah. When you don't know what student government does, it's pretty easy to assume like, oh, it's just a bunch of kids, pretending to be a government. But no, it really does have a big impact. Our total budget on the year, I believe, is $1.2 million. And, that's not just, it's through a lot of different funds. There's a legislative discretionary fund. There's an executive discretionary fund. And then there's, the general reserves. There's all sorts of different ways this money gets spent. But in general, the main focus is student orgs, clubs, pre-professional organizations, etc., as well as various scholarships. But we're also a huge avenue for advocacy between the students and the administration at the school. And, the school has a heck of a lot more than $1.2 million. But, they often don't exactly know what students need or where they need to be best allocating it. So a lot of the programs we take up within student government, not only are they just meant to be funded by us for a semester or a year, but are meant to be eventually picked up by the school. And, that type of thing can't really be done without, constant advocacy and connection building. And so these are all things that we care a lot about.
So you said that when you won this seat, the majority of the seats elected were part of this shut it down movement, right? Or the shut it down. It's kind of like a political party for student government. Could you explain what their goal was with the student government and specifically with this $1.2 million budget that supported student orgs and student life on campus?
Yeah, so it actually technically wasn't a majority. They had 22 of the 45 seats, so just under a majority, but they also won the presidency. So they definitely had enough pull within the government to kind of do what they intended to do if they were organized enough. And yeah, their kind of express platform that they made very clear to the whole school was they wanted to shut everything down. The club funding, they wanted to shut down the scholarships, they wanted to shut down everything the student government did in an attempt to make the university divest from Israel, which, aside from the politics of it, is a very counterintuitive approach to trying to make advocacy. And one of the kind of most unfortunate things about it to me is the general group of people they were intending to represent, Arab and Muslim students on campus. And they wanted representation, and they thought that they were going to get that from the Shut It Down party. But, instead they ended up with a party that didn't really serve anyone, kind of just divided the government, and because of that divided the students. And then a bunch of people were left sitting saying, hey, why is my club not getting funded? Meanwhile, we're on the inside trying to do whatever we can to help mitigate the, general negative effects of that.
So were they successful in the end? What was the outcome of their campaign?
They were fortunately not successful in fully shutting everything down. They definitely blocked it for a while. And, at that point we had to go to alternative avenues. We were able to have the school pick up a bit of the club funding for a period of time so that students weren't left completely out on a limb. They took an interesting approach where they didn't read the rules or understand, how exactly it works, not just getting elected, but maintaining a seat in student government. A lot of them ended up breaking the attendance policy very quickly. And the attendance policy is very easy. It's you get 4 unexcused absences, but you're also allowed 8 excused absences for the whole semester. And that's a very easy and navigable amount of absences, but most of them didn't understand that. They didn't fill out the excusal forms. And so, slowly over time, kind of brick by brick, a lot of them were able to get removed from their position. And then in a meeting, it was October 8th, 2024, so end of last year, they had one meeting where they were attempting to send a majority of the budget to what they called it was reparations to Gaza, but it was actually to a university in the West Bank. And they tried to do that, and ended up not getting it passed. The president and vice president were eventually impeached. And from that point on, the government was able to kind of settle back in. But of course, that was around the time of the fall midterm elections, where anyone who got recalled that semester, their seat was up for election. And so that's when I started Empower Michigan Party.
So you, at that time, were one of the few Jewish students in student government, and you had already dealt with all this drama. What gave you the confidence or the chutzpah to be like, after all that happened, to say, I'm going to start a party? And what led you to run at the top of the ticket?
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to the amount of love I knew this campus had. You know, I didn't start this party to push a political agenda. I didn't start it to get more Jewish students into representation. A majority of the people that ran with us were not Jewish. But I also was able to lean on the fact that I knew enough people on this campus were upset by what happened. Enough people on this campus care more about the student government running properly and having that sense of unity and ability for people to just kind of express their beliefs without receiving all that backlash. And so, you know, we founded this party. It was an apolitical, very expressly apolitical, very expressly, you know, not just supporting one point of view and definitely not trying to suppress another point of view. You know, we recognize that the reason Shut It Down was so successful was that, you know, a majority of people didn't understand what their platform was and weren't voting to shut the government down. They were voting because they were upset and confused and in the middle of a war and didn't know where to go. And so, you know, we wanted to recognize as much as possible that those voices deserve to be heard. And so, you know, I was just very fortunate. I would love to say I did this, you know, in any way by myself, but that's so far from the truth. I mean, as soon as I founded this, I had dozens of people coming to me and saying, hey, I'd love to help with this and that. And these were students from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of political views that just really agreed with me and wanted to support the centralized mission that we're not trying to get rid of politics. We're not trying to suppress anyone's voice or tell them they can't speak out, but that can't come at the expense of the general student body. And that can't come at people's expense, at the expense of the right of people to kind of express themselves and have that freedom to speak about and feel how they want to feel about things.
Amazing. What kind of work did it take to get from the beginning to the finish line of this campaign?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting process, to say the least. You know, we treated it as formal a campaign as we could have. I was very lucky to run with my president, Eric Veal, was, you know, very experienced with other political campaigns that he had worked on in his career and very dedicated to helping push the message out. And so, you know, our campaign was kind of twofold. It was one, just reaching as many students as possible, because we recognized that, as I said, you know, such a small percentage of the student body votes in a traditional election. Like, we had, I think, 15% turnout this year, and that was considered a high turnout. So it was really just outreach, making sure people know, hey, we're here, what we're here to do. But also making sure people understand that we're not just here asking for your vote. We're here asking for your vote for a reason. We built a policy booklet out that was around 20 pages and had a really strong proposals of not just things we want to do, but how we're going to do them. So yeah, we had an incredible team. And then, you know, we also built out a huge team of candidates because we were able to be so successful in those fall elections. We were lucky people wanted to come to us and they wanted to run. And, you know, these were people truly from every background you could imagine. We ended up running a slate of a little over 30 candidates. And then in addition to our team, we had another probably 10 to 15 people that just wanted to help join the coalition, didn't ask for anything in return. We were tabling, we were flyering, we were canvassing apartments, as well as just, you know, banking on social media, banking on personal networks and group chats and all sorts of different things to really just make this as visible to the students as possible.
So you talk about how this campaign was not about increasing the number of Jewish students in the student government or pushing a specific agenda. It was really to empower all different sides, all different perspectives, and also just to like make a more inclusive student government that the student body knew about. Did your Jewish identity become relevant in this campaign?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the center of it, unfortunately. You know, I did my best to not even make my own political views as visible as a lot of people did, because I wanted to make it clear to anyone joining our party, like, hey, you don't have to feel a certain way about this or that to join. You don't have to express this belief or that belief. But unfortunately, you know, part of being a Jewish student is recognizing that, you know, even if you don't make it the center of your life, someone will. And so, yeah, the actual election process was pretty difficult. We had a lot of online doxing. We had people on our team getting threats and all sorts of things like that. I had members of my personal family getting attacked, which was pretty difficult for me. I mean, I'm pretty thick-skinned, and I'm not one of those people that takes things very personally when it's about myself. But when it's about my family, it's a little more difficult. So part of being Jewish is not allowing yourself to be seen as the victim and not taking that as a, oh, boohoo, I'm having all these people hate on me. It's understanding that people are going to be that way. People are going to conduct themselves the way they choose to conduct themselves. And it's our job to just take the high road, focus on what we know, which is that we know for a fact, despite how large the school is, a majority of the people at the school care more about what we care about, which is unity and representation and supporting everyone than people that are willing to hate us just for, or hate me just for my identity. So, it was not the easiest process, but we're very happy with the way we went about it. And in the end of the day, love won, unity won.
I appreciate that you had such a thick skin about it and that you do not consider yourself a victim. Who did you lean on for support to get through that time? Because I know you're putting on a really strong face and you have a thick skin, but those type of things could really get to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I of course it got to me. I'd love to say it didn't, but that's part of being a human is things like that are difficult to deal with, and they're going to get to you. But at the end of the day, I mean, I leaned on my whole support network, which starts with my family. It's always going to start with my family, and everyone in my family's we're pretty used to this. I'm not from a very Jewish area. So when I was in middle school, even high school, I was kind of very used to being othered and feeling like a bit of an outsider in these spaces, and leaning on my family. Our relationship with God is really important to me, and continuing to pray, continuing to give myself space to remind myself what are the most important things in the world, and keep perspective as well. Like I wasn't a fan of the things I dealt with, sure, but I'm not sitting here pretending like the things I had to deal with in my time in college compare to so many different people and what they have to deal with even to this day. So there's that. And then another big thing too, and this was kind of one of the most ironic things about it, I got so much support from students that don't necessarily agree with me politically. A lot of my Arab and Muslim students that I became really close friends with within student government were kind of outpouring support to me and saying, listen, like, a lot of people are going to say things about you. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are not from either of the communities that are affected by the war. They're from communities that have no idea what's going on, and they want to jump on some sort of train where they feel like they're advocating for something. But anyone who knows me knows what I've done here in my time, knows that I care so much more about unity and love than anything. And so I was really fortunate that people expressed that to me and made it very clear, like, hey, listen, I know a lot of people are trying to pretending to represent our community and pretending to say, oh, you're this and that, but we know who you are, we know what you care about, and we're glad you're here.
Yeah, I think the media and the outside world really likes to paint this issue of anti-Semitism on campus as an issue of Jewish students versus Arab and Palestinian students, and that our causes and our hopes are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So tell me about, you worked so hard. You're also balancing classes and being a student, which I know from personal experience, running for student body president was like the toughest few months of my entire life. I think I was sleeping like 3 hours a night. What was it like getting that phone call or finding out that you guys had won?
Oh, I'm not above admitting to you, I cried for a while. So I had dinner with my mother, president I was running with, now president of the university, Eric Veal, his mother, his grandmother, and I was doing my best to hold it together. I'm glad my mom was there because she tends to help with that. But, we were a little bit of a mess. And then, call came in from someone we knew on the elections team, pretty much just saying like, hey, it's just about done. And I broke down into tears and don't think I stopped crying for the next couple hours. It was definitely a big weight off my shoulders. And, as I said, it was really difficult just kind of having to see my family go through that and having to see my family feel like they were going to stand in the way of me and accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish and doing what I wanted to do here. So at the end of the day, I win or lose, whatever happens in my life, like I'm going to wake up every morning, go to sleep every night, talking to God and trusting that there's a plan and there's something out there for me to do. So if I hadn't won this, I would have known that was part of the plan, and I had to dedicate my life and effort to something else. But luckily enough, we were able to bring it home, and it was a very emotional night, to say the least.
I can understand why that would be so emotional after such a tumultuous year and everything you and your family had to go through to know that you had won. What did it mean to members of the Jewish community to see that a Jewish student was able to win? an election of this size?
I mean, yeah, that was truly the most meaningful part of it to me, was just meeting with people in my community. Like one of the first people I called was my rabbi, because I knew he was nervous and waiting to hear news, but he was less nervous than I was because he trusts God a little more. And so, just talking to as many Jewish students as I could who come to me, out of the woodworks and just say, listen, like, I am so grateful you chose to do this. And so it's, again, it was also this semester specifically, most juniors at Michigan go abroad. A majority of the people that I am used to seeing and relying on and kind of having there as my support structure are in another country halfway across the world. And even they were sending all these nice, encouraging text messages. I was getting texts from kids I knew at other schools saying, oh, they heard about this, and it's inspiring them to do this and that at their own school. So for me, the most important thing was just making sure the Jewish community knows that we have the ability to uplift ourselves. They did it to me. They can do it to absolutely anybody. And, it's a very special thing. It's a very special community. First Shabbat dinner I went to after this, my mother joined me as well because she was still in town, and all the love and support we were getting really, really meant the world. So more than anything, just that's kind of the most pride I've taken in this is reminding the Jewish community, like, hey, we are agents of our own success.
Your president, Eric, he is not a Jewish student, and I'm really curious what his response was to all the hate you are going through. Was he surprised to see that? And did he experience similar levels of hate in this election? And yeah, how did you guys support each other?
I mean, Eric he's one of the most upstanding people I've ever met in my life. He's truly such a champion of peace, love, and unity. He's an incredibly hard worker, a very ambitious guy. I mean, he's one of those people we all look at and we're like, someday we're all going to be like, hey, I knew Eric Beale. And he knows how highly I think of him. But he's also, from a community that gets it. He's a black student who's had to deal with things that I can't personally imagine. And a lot of the, historically, the black community and Jewish community have had a ton of overlap in that field. I mean, anyone who really studies history knows that the Jewish saying that we always say is Tikkun Olam, heal the world, and the kind of black moniker is justice for all. And, those two go very hand in hand. And so our communities are very, very linked in many ways. And, Eric, when he joined team, he knew going in, he was like, yeah, this is going to be an issue. Like, you're going to deal with racism because of me, and I'm going to deal with anti-Semitism because of you. And that's the type of thing that we both kind of just accepted. But, as I said, the same reason I knew going in this was going to be a big bump along the road, but wouldn't stand in the way of us achieving our goal. He knew the same thing, and he knew that our community is going to deal with issues like that, and he was going to have to deal with, by proxy and association. But he cared more about what I cared about, which is unification and love, and he knew that message would get out there, and he put everything he could into spreading that. So incredibly, incredibly grateful for Eric. I mean, he's a really special guy, and he's someone that I know is going to be a lifelong friend, kind of however our careers end up playing out. But he's also someone that I will tell you to look out for is going to be very, very impactful in this world.
Our last episode was with your now former President Ono. And at the end, when I asked him what gives him hope for the future of higher education, he said students like Lucas Korn and Eric, who have stepped up and led and brought unity to campus. And talking to you now, it makes so much sense why he said that. But what can you say about him and his leadership, and what approach the University of Michigan has taken that has been certainly different from many other universities?
Wow. I mean, to hear that, I didn't know he said that about me, but I'm honored. I'm a really big fan of him and the way he's chosen to carry himself. I'm excited for him to start his new chapter at the University of Florida and do what he sees as best for himself, his family, and his career. But big fan of Santa. I think when you look at university administrators, you have to recognize that what they're dealing with now is really not what they signed up for. It's not what they studied and trained for. These are educators looking to bolster the quality of education at all these schools and to expand all these programs, but are kind of put in the crosshairs of very difficult and tense political issues. It's very easy for a lot of people to blame everything on the school and not really look at all the great things they've done. But in the end of the day, that's part of leadership. A lot of leadership is understanding that people are going to be upset either way, and you got to just do what's best for you and for the students and for kind of just achieving the goals you set out to achieve. So Santa really, really tried to make sure everyone was heard and represented, but also make sure people were safe. There's a very fine line between protecting freedom of speech, which I think I can speak for almost every student I know, is really important to us. Regardless of politics, we want people to be able to speak their minds without fear of any sort of repercussions.
What do you think are the lessons from your story and what you went through that the rest of the country and the rest of the universities across the country can take?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it goes both ways. You can't get people to listen to you unless you're willing to listen to them. And so, all the incredible relationships I've built with people with whom I disagree within student government, I'm very proud of my job in that, but also they served incredible roles in that as well, because the bottom line of all of this is we're all students, we're all humans, and we're all people. And so if you're going to look at someone as just whatever political ideology you think they agree with and then discount them and all the things they say because of that, you're not going to get anywhere. And more than anything, they're not going to listen to you. And so it's about, you don't have to find compromise. You don't have to find places where you agree on this and that to just look at each other and say, listen, like, we're humans. And I think it's a big thing that is lost on a lot of people when there's a war like this. Like, regardless of who started this or who's right and wrong and this and that, like, war is awful. War is truly the most awful thing anyone in our generation has had to deal with. And when you're dealing with, having to call your family and having to worry about the safety of your loved ones, that's not a political thing. In the most tense and difficult times, we have to rely on our humanity more, and we have to talk to people more and, recognize that you don't have every answer to everything, and that's okay, because everything you don't know is an opportunity to learn, and every person you haven't met and understood is an opportunity to grow as a person yourself.
For Jewish students who are interested in getting involved in student government but are maybe afraid, I've been there when I was the only Jewish student and I was like, can I run for student body president? What advice would you give them? And how important is it for Jewish voices to be represented in student government right now?
Yeah, it's a tough question because every student at every school, they have different scenarios, different circumstances. And so I'm not going to speak to, any individual circumstance and say, oh, I know better how you can deal with this than you do, because of course I don't. But the most important thing for me is just, you're not going to be able to be Jewish publicly without some of the backlash. That's part of it. You have to accept that. But you can win if you truly care about something, which I think a lot of people in our community are starting to understand in the last, year and a half, 2 years, why it's so important to care. At a certain point, you got to recognize, like, you're going to be Jewish your whole life. But the flip side of it is your entire life, you're going to have the support of the Jewish community, and you're going to have incredible people coming out of the woodworks to help you. And if you're able to, send a strong message of, I'm a Jew and I care about what I care about, I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm not going to tuck my chain. I'm not going to stop publicly speaking about what means a lot to me. I truly have to believe that there's more love in the world than hate. And so with time, that'll show itself.
So this podcast is called Higher Ed because, obviously it's higher education, but Jewish students have so much life and light. And so I want to ask, what does the word chai mean to you, and how did it fit into your story?
Chai to me is it means what it means. It means life. And, I think the Jewish community has a very special and particular appreciation for how important life is. The Jewish people, we care so deeply about life, about celebrating life. We say l'chaim is the traditional toast, and it's to life. And I think it's a beautiful thing because it's really easy for those things to get lost. It's really easy for people to kind of forget how lucky we are to be alive and to just do every single thing we get to do. And so, yeah, whether it's appreciating lives of former people that have lived and using their memories and their what they stood for as motivation and inspiration for your own life, or just sitting at home and recognizing, like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna get out of bed and do something I care about today, because there will all come a day of every single one of our lives where we close our eyes for the last time.
That's such an important reminder. I am really, really grateful that you came on here today to share your story. It was great having you on. I hope we stay in touch, and let me know when you're in DC.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting. I really appreciate everything you do. I appreciate you having me on. It, really means the world. And yeah, just everything you guys do and are going to continue to do.
That's it for this episode of Higher Ed. I'm Luda Issaharov. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. To learn more about how to fight anti-Semitism on your campus, go to notoleranceforantisemitism.adl.org. If you or someone you know would like to report a campus anti-Semitism incident, text CALL HELP to 51555 or go to adl.org/call for free legal help. Subscribe to Higher Ed for conversations and stories about Jewish campus life. Please rate and review us wherever you listen. If you have a story to share, please email us at highered@adl.org. That's CHAIERED@adl.org. We can't wait to hear your story.